This is Philip Rosenthal. I'm at Kirstenbosch Botanical Gardens, which I'd highly recommend to you as a place to come visit and also a great place to pray. I've got good news and also a new concern to share with you this week. The first bit of good news is that last week we asked you to write into Parliament and ask them to take out Section 10 from the money laundering bill, which would have required every non-profit organization into South Africa to register with the government, and in effect would have made most of the non-profit organizations in this country illegal. Now, the good news is that Parliament has listened to us, and they said that they are going to change the bill to take this out. So really, I think that shows the value of speaking up and will be encouragement to keep speaking up. But at the same time, we've got a new concern, which is that there's another bill which is called the Protection of Constitutional Democracy Against Terrorism and Related Activities Bill. Now that sounds really good, and I think that all of us in principle would want to fight terrorism. But the difficulty with this bill is that it is broadening the definition of what is considered or could be considered a terrorist organization, and it is adding to the powers of the police to investigate organizations that they suspect could be terrorist organizations. Now, if that is used correctly, there's not going to be any problem. But the difficulty is that if it is not used correctly and it is abused, then we could have such a law being abused to clamp down on organizations that are simply opposing the government. And there are two examples of why we would have such a concern. The first reason is that in 2002, a group of pro-lifers protested at Parliament against the fact that they were not being allowed to have a say in an abortion law amendment bill. And they were excluded from participation in that parliamentary hearing by the chair of the committee, James Nkulu, who just happened to be a veteran of Umkhonto weSizwe and one of the founders of their intelligence branch. And he threatened the pro-lifers that they should be investigated by national intelligence, even though there was absolutely no evidence that the pro-lifers were engaged or advocating any form of violence. And so this is really concerning. The second example is that an older member of our organization spoke up in the apartheid years in favor of multiracialism, against racial laws. He wasn't advocating violence in any form, but he was monitored his entire life by the security police, and one day he saw that his mail had been tampered with, and so he then filed a criminal charge against the security police for tampering with his mail. They then called him in and interrogated him and revealed to him, in fact, yes, they had been tampering with his mail, and in fact they'd been monitoring everything that he had been doing his entire life, and even sent spies posing as friends to go and visit his activities, which had actually been reporting on him. Then they tried to recruit him into working for the security police, which he flatly refused, I think, which was quite the right thing to do. Now, we don't want that sort of government again in South Africa. We have an open democracy, and if we are going to give more powers to the police to investigate, and if they are going to tighten up on what they say is a threat of terrorist activity, then they need to have a reason for doing that. Now, South Africa's got a lot of problems, but as far as I can see, terrorism is not one of the problems that we have at the moment, and so I cannot see any reason to make changes in this law. And the opinion of AfriForum's lawyers, who I highly respect, is that this bill would allow a hostile person in the government to construe a perfectly innocent anti-government organization to being something that is in need of investigation. So until they can prove some need for this bill and that they can satisfy us that their legal definitions are not going to be abused, we would oppose this bill as a matter of precaution. And we also think this thing is being rushed through. We've kind of been ambushed by this thing, and we don't see any hurry or need for this to be done with such a level of urgency. So I would like to ask the Parliamentary Committee to reconsider this thing and for an extension of time.
What can I do? Learn, pray, speak, and give. Speak up straight away by sharing this video to Facebook or WhatsApp, subscribing to this channel. You can sign up for our email list and follow our Facebook page. And if you're able to give, that will also be a great help.